All right. Hi, Imagine Church and Imagine Kids families. This is Gregory, and I'm here with my wife, Tamara, and Rosabella, and we are talking again today with Dr. Pam Davis, and we're asking some questions that can give us insight and wisdom during this unique time. And Dr. Pam Davis is the Director of Graduate Programs and Counseling at Gordon-Conwell, and she spent 22 years in Thailand as a missionary. I want to make sure she gets that because I misspoke last time. And she is a play therapist supervisor. And you got a lot of great experience, Dr. Davis. And I have a question this time for you. I carry some anxiety. I am somewhat germophobic, and I notice details a lot. And at times, not constant, but I do fear that Rosabella is going to catch the coronavirus and it won't turn out good. So a lot of this is overwhelming me at times. And so what would be some steps, the first steps in addressing this without just having the pat answer of, well, Gregory, you really don't have enough faith if you have these concerns. I am a firm believer that God chooses to intervene at different times for his purposes, and we don't yet see those sometimes, but that's not really what I'm looking for. The answer is, well, Gregory, it's all about your faith. Yes, faith is extremely important, and Jesus spoke about that, but I am at many times overwhelmed, and I bring that anxiety into the family, and I don't think it's healthy. So I wanted to ask you about that.
Well, I'm glad you are asking about anxiety, because during this time of the COVID crisis, it is actually the topic that I've seen the most in children and in families. It's the condition that I've talked about the most to parents. And so I just want to say that first, Gregory, you are not alone.
Thank you.
This is like a really big thing. And at the same time, for any parent who already had maybe an underlying problem with anxiety or worry. And I say this because it's actually in my own family. My brother will never watch this, so I can, say this, but he kind of always had an underlying anxiety after spending many, many years as a firefighter, first responder. Mm-hmm. So he kind of carries an anxiety about safety with him. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine, for anyone with an underlying anxiety already, this kind of crisis is gonna just fuel that. Mm-hmm. And so people who already struggled a little bit with anxiety, like tiny a, little anxiety, will feel like all the letters are capital letters.
Right.
And I think that's really, I've seen this happen more and more. And it's because this really is an anxious time. Mm-hmm. And so on one hand, while I want to say it's normal, and while I think our faith can be helpful, usually I find that an answer like you need to have more faith or trust God more doesn't usually help that much.
Right.
One of the things, though, I do like to say is if you as a parent are anxious, you might pay attention to that and recognize that your kids will also be more anxious or act out in other ways, other unwanted behaviors. Mm-hmm. So maybe if you have kids who aren't anxious, but mom or dad is anxious, suddenly kids, they see, hey, there's this heightened anxiety in dad. Mm-hmm. And so what do? But maybe there's discipline problems in other areas. Mm-hmm. This is important because sometimes what happens is we want to fix our kids without fixing ourselves. Mm. What I mean by that is I like to think of the metaphor of, someone will talk to me about their child and say, please, basically, turn off the siren on the ambulance. My child is really acting out, or my child is really anxious. Help me turn off the siren, because the siren is the thing we see, right?
Right.
And the thing we hear. But the reality is, if we turn off the siren, we still haven't addressed what's in the back of the ambulance. Mm-hmm. And what we really need to do is open up the back of the ambulance and say, hey, in this case, as you so vulnerably shared, Gregory, you're struggling with anxiety. And what I would say about that is, it goes back to that old adage we hear: first put on your own oxygen mask before you put on the oxygen mask of the person next to you.
Right.
I'll say that in terms of dealing with the COVID crisis too. Like, be cautious and be aware that it's really important for you to manage your own anxiety, because that's actually the number one thing that will help your children.
Okay, that's really good, because you answered, that the other part of my question about, I feel guilty about carrying that over into the family, and I've learned that they do feed off of that. And sometimes I think most times when I'm stressed out, and then the kids, I notice every little detail about what the kids are doing. It's usually something that they've done wrong, that they've left something here, and that's just overwhelming the kids at times. And I don't want to be that kind of dad. I don't want to be that kind of father. So that's really, really good.
What would you recommend to how to calm anxiety? What would you be?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's where I was going. So I think that now that we know that, now that we've understand that, we say, okay, so how do I manage my own anxiety? Because what I heard you just describe, Gregory, is one of the ways you manage anxiety, at least right now, is to increase your attention to detail.
Yeah.
So when you feel really anxious or really stressed, the way that you manage that, at least what you just told me, is let me increase my attention to detail, whether that's over my own personal self, whether that's over my kids, over my wife, over my work.
Right.
And I think the first step is just recognizing that, actually the mindful awareness that this attention to detail isn't actually helping my anxiety. It's increasing it.
Right.
So then and this is different for everybody. It's hard to have a black and white, but what does help your anxiety? For many of us, it's activity, because anxiety has an energy in it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you feel this intensity in your body. So for many of us, one of the best ways to reduce anxiety is to do something active. Take a walk, go for a run. I do yoga. I love yoga, and it really helps to calm my anxiety in that. Not everybody does yoga. Some people walk, some people run, some people draw or do artwork. But if you notice, the common denominator here is things that are active. And then I will say too, pray.
Yeah.
I think prayer can be helpful, not prayer that in guilt of, oh God, I messed up again, please, but more like, God, I am bringing this anxiety to you because I know that you know me. It's the Psalm 139. Before you were born, he knit you together in your mother's womb, either as a person who has anxious tendencies, or, in my brother's case, a person whose anxiety was created because of the career he chose. But God knew that too when he knit him together. And I do need to say this too. I think that there's something to be said for us accepting the way God made us that somehow allows us to relax. Like when we can say, I was made for you, it sounds like, Gregory, I was made to be a man who constantly feels an underlying level of anxiety. For me, I would say I was made to be a woman who feels things very deeply. And so much growth when you can say, and this is who God made me, and I have something to offer his world, even with this.
Yeah, that's really good. And I just want to highlight what you did there and how that made an impact on me. The way I deal with my anxiety is really, amping it up with the details. And I'm already very detail oriented. And that is not the right release. The release is find an activity. And it's interesting because, even though the gyms are closed, I usually work out very regularly, and the gyms are closed. They're still walking. You could do push-ups, sit-ups, and doing things around the house. So it's not impossible to do that activity, but it's convenient. Oh, well, the gyms are closed. I'll just skip a day of activity. So I think that's a very good solution, is to get back into that physical activity of working out the way I used to. And, you can do push-ups and sit-ups at home and things like that. So I really, I want to thank you. That was really good.
And some people, they don't do the physical activity. Maybe they're not able, but they can do writing. They can write, or they can do artwork, but almost always it needs to be some kind of something physical, because there's all this anxious energy in our bodies.
Yeah, that is true. There is this anxious energy. That's it. You really summed it up well. Anxious energy in the body. All right. Did you have anything to follow up?
Yeah. And so my neighbor was getting rid of this really big canvas. Huge, like the size of 2 windows put together. And I couldn't resist, so I grabbed it. And I haven't painted in, well, how old is Caleb? Like 12 years.
Wow. Wow.
And so I just really by accident, I started painting again. And I noticed a difference in myself. And it was hard for me because I've got 4 kids. And it's like, you shouldn't be spending time painting. Like, that's so selfish. Like, you've got other things to do. But I noticed how calming it was, how good it felt to get back into that. And, he even noticed.
Let me remind you that, because I want to go back to your statement for a minute, Tamara. You shouldn't be doing this because that's so selfish. You've got too much going on. Let me remind you that actually you doing that also calms your children, because the more you put on your own oxygen mask, the more your children get their oxygen mask put on. And so if you can even remind yourself in this time for painting of, I'm not just helping me, I'm actually helping my whole family by doing this.
Yeah. Good reminder.
I think it's a great reminder. In fact, I'm big on putting up signs and things like that. And that's, I think, if we could put up a few signs around the house, put on your own oxygen mask. And then Tamara and I will get that, because it's so convenient, or it's so easy to forget that, if I'm anxious, that really affects the kids. For me, it's so easy to forget that. And so that is a great reminder. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think
thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Pam, for that. We'll wrap it up there.
It's an opportunity. I love doing this, and it's really a joy to me to just get to speak out of the abundance of my heart.
Oh, well, we love it. We love it. Well, we're going to wrap up there. This is for the Imagine Kids parents, to give you guys some wisdom and advice from Dr. Pam Davis. And we'll see you next time with the next question. Bye.